And we're live. Okay. Courtland Warren, thank you so much for being here. I would like to just give a quick introduction about Courtland Warren. Even Courtland probably doesn't know this, but literally 1 week before, so I first met Courtland on a Thursday, but the Sunday prior, here I was feeling totally sorry for myself in the state of Iowa. And I had a conversation with Casey Council Jiha, who is just such an amazing human being. And she had just randomly called me. I'm running around doing all kinds of chores, cleaning the house, doing all kinds of crazy stuff. And all she did was just ask me how I was doing. And I randomly burst into tears. I'm just feeling sorry for myself. I had all these major problems. And looking back on it, I realized, what a victim I was being, just feeling sorry for myself. But at the time, I'm just like, man, all these terrible things are happening to me. And all she asked me was, what are you doing Thursday? And I said, and you're muted, by the way, Courtland, I'm sorry. Go ahead and unmute. Gotcha. But I said, well, I don't really have plans this weekend, nothing that can't be moved around at least, And so she said, hey, if we make arrangements for you to come out here, are you willing to invest in yourself? And I said yes, and I committed to it. And that was how Courtland and I connected. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I have it all together, but I will say that the same problems that I have, the problems that I have today are not the same problems that I had then. And that is something. And the goals that I had set for myself then, I have completely slaughtered. So that's another big thing. And when I asked Courtland to speak on my WTF Wednesday, I never thought that in a million years, he would say yes. So I am just thrilled beyond all measure to introduce this man. And I'm just so excited. Take it away.
All right, Sandy, I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning. And is my volume's okay? Just do like a thumbs up. We're good. Okay. So thank you for your time and attention this morning. And Sandy, a little humor here. We're friends on Instagram, and I was telling Sandy this. I was like, we're friends on Instagram, and now and then you would like something on my page, and every time I would read it, it would say, I read that broke girl. And so I'm like, why would anybody have that as their handle? And then I would look at it, that broker, every time I would see it though. And then, so when I mentioned that to Sandy, she's like, see, it gets your attention every single time. So you're a much better marketer than I am. And I did not make the connection of you and Casey Council being and Rick Jiha, Casey's one of my favorite people. I've been facilitating personal development courses for 20 years. And in about year 2, year 3, Casey Council came through the classes, and she was, Sandy, the first person up to that point, she was the first person who ever upgraded from a class that I was facilitating. So every time I see her, it's like she was like that belief. I was like, what? Someone listened to me, someone believed they're going to do it. And so I have just a great affinity for her. And of course, I said yes. It's been my experience, Sandy, that most people will not follow up. Most people don't do what they say they're going to do. And so I like to make myself available and approachable. You asked, I said yes. And it's because this is the work that is important to me. So thank you for the opportunity. And so what's the flow like? How are we going to do this? I feel like I'm on a morning show. Like, what do you want to do? You want me to just dive in? You're going to ask me questions? We're going to go back and forth. What do we got?
I want Courtland to do what Courtland does best.
Okay. You like just start talking. All right. So well, to those of you who are listening in through the Zoom or listening in through the live, we'll jump right to it because I don't like wasting time. I don't want to waste yours. I definitely don't want to waste mine. And my hope is that by the time we're done, I don't even know how much time we have, maybe 45, 50 minutes or so. By the time we're done, I want you to be thankful that you tuned in, thankful that you plugged in. I believe that we are in the attention economy, and the gift that people give us is their attention. It is also my view that the only reason why someone gives you their attention is because they have a problem that they hope you can solve, whether that be in real estate, finance, personal development. If I get you to pause for just a moment. I run a Facebook ad or an Instagram, ad or whatever it is. If I can get you to pause for just a moment, understand that I believe that you're only pausing, and your clients or potential clients are only pausing because they have a problem that they hope you can solve. And the reality is that if you don't have something of value to add to a person's life, then you haven't earned the right, you don't deserve to even interrupt whatever they got going. On that particular day, when Casey reached out to you and she simply said, "How are you doing?" And before you knew it, you were you were a ball of tears, right? She didn't know it. Okay, but you answered the phone. She got your attention through that question. And I didn't know that this happened, but she got your attention through that question. How are you doing? And there was a relationship that existed between the two of you that led you to not just go to the place of, well, I'm okay, I'm fine, how are you? Right? There was a relationship that existed there. And when she asked the question of how are you doing, you were at a place where you were willing to be honest about the fact that things weren't where you desire to have them be. Like it wasn't what you wanted. Your life wasn't where you desired. And then she went on to say, so, hey, if you're willing to invest in yourself this weekend, if you got the time this weekend, here's a solution. Here's a solution to a problem. And she doesn't even know exactly what all the problems are. We fast forward to today, and those problems that you had then are not your problems anymore. The goals that you had then, you have surpassed. She came into your life and she was a positive interruption for you. So my first premise here for us this morning as you go out into your day is to recognize that if you display the ability to get a person's attention, you have their attention for one reason, and that is for you to solve a problem that they have. They may or may not even be aware of it. And sometimes we have to agitate it a bit to get them to see that. And so my hope is in this morning that we can show you some ways of being able to do that effectively. And a lot of what I share, frankly, in the wrong hands can be used for manipulation. So I'm going to trust that because you're friends of Sandy, that you'll do good with the information that you have. One of the reasons, Sandy, that I say yes to you and to opportunities like this is because it's still a little bit shocking to me, frankly. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago that, I'm a kid growing up in a little town called Idabel, Oklahoma, on the west side of town. That town, if you did a Google Earth and you zoomed in, you would see the railroad tracks separating the city east and west. And growing up, it was it really was that, all the white people lived on one side of town, all the black people lived on the other side, on the west side of town. And for me growing up, it felt like there were two lines of people, two lines. There was the line of the haves and the line of the have-nots. And my family, we were in the have-not line. Is that making sense? And all I wanted to be able to do was change lines. I wanted to figure out a way to change lines. It seemed like there's a kid, it seemed like all of the positive things that were happening were on the opposite side of town. So think, little kid, 6, 7 years old, McDonald's comes to town. I remember when the first McDonald's landed in Idabel, and of course it was on the opposite side of town. School was on the opposite side of town. When my mom had to pay bills, she had to go across the tracks to do that. The post office was across the tracks, the grocery store across the tracks. It seems like everything that was positive was on the opposite side, and we were on the side of the have-nots. And I wanted to figure out, how do you change lines? And it seemed like no one knew. And more importantly than that, no one was even asking the question. And so I don't know, I call it God, but there was a question that just drove me from very early on. And that's how I ventured into personal development. I have been professionally in the world of public speaking and so forth for 20 plus years now, and that represents over 50,000 people or so. I've done some of the cool things like TED Talk and Goldcast and so forth, but none of that I understand matters to you specifically this morning. Just kind of wanted to give you an idea of why listen to this guy, because I'm not just a talking head, and I don't teach what I have not tested. The way that I was able to change lines is through the use of the principles, some of which I'm going to share with you this morning. Someone sent me because I talk about my little small town a lot. They sent me a thing, Sandy, a little while ago from Facty.com. And so, Facty had done a study of the worst places to live in the United States of America. Now, of all of the big cities and all of this stuff, the worst places to live, they had the top 30. Idabel, Oklahoma, Sandy, was number 10. Can you believe, like, a town of 7,000 people is number 10, right? So now I use that story as like my street cred. I need street credibility. I need to be able to talk about like what I came through and what I made it through and what I got, so that's my little, if I can make it, you can make it part of that. So here's what I've come to know over that 20 years and in the time that we have. I'll get in as many as I can. We won't get to all of them. First and foremost, it's about understanding that our lives are governed by laws and principle. Okay, I'm not a hype guy. I really, shun the idea that I am a motivational speaker. When I think of motivational speaker or motivation comes from the outside, and so if what puts you into action is coming from outside, then when it wears off, you got to go somewhere else to find it. Does that make sense? Versus inspiration. Inspiration comes from the inside. And there's a why, there's a reason for you doing whatever it is that you're doing, that you're driven to do it even on the days when you don't feel like it, even on the days when you're not in the mood, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's uncomfortable, because it's driven from the inside. It's intrinsic versus extrinsic. Because it's intrinsic, you're willing to do it even on the days that you don't feel like it. And one of the things that I've come to understand is that highly successful people have developed the discipline to do what's necessary even on the days when they're not in the mood. How many of you really been like motivated for like a day, right? You were really motivated for like a day, and then it was 2 weeks, 2 years, maybe 2 months before you were that motivated again. And part of you is like, man, if I could just maintain that level of motivation for an extended period of time, I'd get a whole lot more done. Well, this is the reason why I suggest to people that you want to rely on your disciplines, not on motivation, because motivation can wear thin. But if it's a discipline, you do it even when you don't feel like it. And so when it comes to discipline, principles, laws that govern how you are able to move your life, Sandy, okay? You are able to move your life because of the application of principle. And it turns out that success leaves clues. That once it's a principle, if it's a law, then you can actually begin to apply it and have a reasonable expectation of the same types of results or outcomes, okay? So we're going to cover, if it's okay with you, all right, we're going to cover some of those principles that govern how we're able to move and navigate life. And as a result of that, you can upgrade. Right? This is what I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able to upgrade your life so that you have the results that you deserve to have. If you've ever, flown first class, or you've flown enough that they upgraded you when you went to check in, or you got to a hotel, they upgraded you. Then there's a sense of status. There's a feeling of, man, I'm special, I am important. Okay, I believe that you're important. I believe that you're special. So when I hear people say, oh, I'm not that special, there's nothing special about me, you won't hear that come from Courtland. Okay, you will not hear that come from me. I will not say that I am not special, because I believe that I am. I also believe that you are also. So when we talk about how to upgrade one's life so that you can have the results that you deserve to have, we got to understand the laws that govern that, so that it's not just some, magic fairy dust and some hype person that came into your life on a Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock Pacific time. So the first law that governs existence is the law of conservation of energy, or to say it differently, energy is. Now, the reason why this is important, okay, this first law states that energy is, that it can neither be created nor destroyed, it can only change forms. So energy is important because what we're recognizing is that everything is energy. Okay, now not a news flash, but watch where we're going with this. But the first principle is that energy is, that everything is energy. And the important part of that definition is that it can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change form. Now, if energy is, that means all is energy, then there's nothing that energy is not. So the ink pen that I'm holding in my hand, the device that you're using to log into this Zoom, my hardware here, my computer here, okay, it's all energy. So what I want you to do for just a moment is to look around whatever space you're in right now. So if you're in your room, so check out the door. I see the door there behind you, your microphone, your clothing, the chair you're sitting in, the ceiling that you're under. And as you look around, you see these material objects. What I want you to see is not the door itself, not the microphone itself. I want you to go a bit deeper and recognize that what you see is an idea. What you're looking at was first an idea in someone's mind. When you look at your bank account, what you're looking at is an idea that was first in your mind. When you look at your relationship or the lack of relationship, what you're seeing is an idea that has been manifested. Okay. So as I look around the space that I'm in right now, I see just a whole lot of energy that has become form. Now, why is that important? It's important because when you look at the results that you have in your life, those results are simply forms of energy. That's it. We sometimes apply more meaning and story and context to it, and we use it to say that, we're a good person or a bad person, successful or not successful. It's none of that. It's simply energy, and that's all it is. Now, if it can neither be created nor destroyed, it can only change forms. So what then happens if there's something that is seemingly absent or missing from my space? There's something that I want in my life that I don't have right now. Well, it's not that it doesn't exist. It's not even that it's missing. Okay. And so in essence, we can't even create it. Why? Because it's energy, and energy can't be created. Well, it can't be destroyed. Why? Because it's energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So I want it in my space, but it's not here now. We got to first understand that it actually is there, but it's not in the form that you want it in, because all we can do with energy is change the form of it. So in essence, we're all alchemists. We'll do an alchemy. What is alchemy? Zoom. If I do well enough and you invite me back, I'll come back and talk about alchemy. I don't have time today. All right. So the first law is that energy is. It can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change forms. The second law, and there are 7 of them. The second law is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. The law of perpetual transmutation of energy is just a fancy way of saying that energy moves into physical form. Okay. So the highest form of energy is thought. I left that part out. My bad. The highest form of energy is thought. Okay. So when I ask you to look around your surroundings and what you see is thoughts having become things, that's the highest form of energy that exists, is an idea. How you think, what you believe, that's the highest form of energy. Okay, so what you're seeing in your physical surroundings now is evidence of the second law, which is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. The law of perpetual transmutation of energy says that energy is moving, perpetual, it's always moving and into a physical form. So another way to say this, and you've heard me say this before, Sandy, thoughts become things. Now, you've heard this before. You've read it in all the great, personal development books. You've heard speakers before me say it, or perhaps, a YouTube influencer, right? They always say it, right? Thoughts become things, but now you're going to understand why. You understand why because energy is. And then the second law, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, says that thoughts become things. It moves into physical form. So now we're not talking about the fleeting thoughts at the conscious level of mind. That's not what we're talking about. And it's not instantaneous. But what we are talking about is the predominant ways of thinking and believing, okay? We will actually into our lives see evidence of that being true. So the reason why Sandy during the introduction can say, you know what? I'm not saying I got it all together. I'm not saying that I don't have my challenges, but what I used to struggle with is not my struggle anymore. The goals that I once had, I've annihilated those, right? So what that is evidence of, Sandy, is that you began to take on a new thought, a new way of thinking. You were able to transform, and through that transformation, you now think differently, believe differently, and the results, what you see in your life is different today, and it's not what it once was. That's evidence of the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. So if energy is, and it can neither be created nor destroyed, and it's moving, and the highest form of energy is thought, and it's always moving into physical form, then it matters what we think about. Our thoughts become things. Our thoughts become things, and what we see in our lives, is evidence of what our predominant ways of thinking have been. So being upset with yourself about where you are currently, or being mad about or resentful towards the results that you have right now is futile. Okay, it doesn't make any sense, right? Because it's only feedback on what you've been thinking prior to. So if you want tomorrow to be different, if you want your life to be different in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year from now, then you begin today thinking differently. Why? Because those new thoughts will become things as well. So law number three is, so we got the first law of conservation of energy is. The second law, the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. The third law is the law of relativity. Okay, and the law of relativity essentially says that nothing is either good or bad, short or tall, big or small, until we relate it to something else. Okay, until the law of relativity. So until we relate it to something else. Everything just is until we compare it to something. So when I look at my life and, I may not have the results that Sandy has. Now I start to feel bad about where I'm at. Well, why does that matter? Well, if I start to feel bad about where I am, okay, based on the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, I'll create more evidence in my life of that. Why? Because that thought is a form of energy. So I got to recognize then that nothing is either, so someone says, well, it's a great day. And I might say, compared to what? Or a person says, well, it's a terrible day. Compared to what? Say nothing is either good or bad until you relate it or compare it to something else. Why does this matter? Because a lot of times, particularly in your industry, okay, Sandy, in your industry where, agents and brokers are oftentimes, comparing their results to other people, well, we got to be mindful of unfavorable comparisons, okay? Because if I compare myself or relate, so I can stick with the law term, okay? If I relate my life to someone else and I do so unfavorably, then that will actually trigger a negative emotion or belief or form of energy in me. And what I now know is that my thoughts will attract to me that which is consistent with my underlying belief. So if I look at my results and I'm relating my results to someone else's, and I'm doing so unfavorably, then I lose. And that produces an energy, which produces a thought, which will then manifest itself into something more that maybe I do not desire. Okay, so now, well, the law of relativity, nothing's good or bad, big or small, until we relate it to something else. So we got to be mindful of unfavorable comparisons and recognize that it just is. Why? Because it's energy. Then the next law is the law of vibration. And the law of vibration is will describe a feeling or emotion as conscious awareness of vibration. Okay, I'll slow down just a bit because I feel like I've been talking super fast. All right, so the law of vibration is basically you tuning into what you feel. And because a feeling is conscious awareness of vibration. My feeling is I'm in tune with, I'm present with, I'm aware of how I feel. Why does that matter? Well, because the more in tune I am with how I'm feeling, then I can be more aware of what I'm in the process of creating. Because whatever whatever you emotionalize, you get more of. So if you're one of these highly successful, people, I see a Rand. I'm just going to call names of people that I see on the Zoom. I see Randy Wilson. I know Rick Salmaron, right? So if you're a person who's a high achiever and you get great results, and you notice that when you get really great results, you get really good results, and you don't celebrate it, you don't really acknowledge it. Someone tells you, "Hey, great job," and you're like, "Oh, it was no big deal. It's no big deal. That was nothing," right? You get the award. "Oh, that was nothing," right? You don't really emotionalize the success, but then things don't go your way, or there was a perceived failure. You didn't get what you wanted. It didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And then you become, you emotionalize it. You beat yourself up. You become very self-critical. Understand that whatever you emotionalize, you get to repeat. Whatever you give emotion to, you attract more of. So if you're a person who doesn't celebrate your wins, you don't celebrate your successes, but you are hard on yourself when things don't go the way that you want, based on how the law works, you're going to attract more of that. Does that make sense? Okay, I hope hopefully that's resonating with you. So the reason why the law of vibration fits into this conversation is because you want to be attuned to what you're feeling. You want to be attuned to how you feel. So, I would love it when a plan comes together, Sandy. So if we go back to that day when you got a call from that very special friend and the friend says, "How are you doing?" And you went into your emotional display, like there was a part of you that knew that you were not well, that you weren't doing well. You were not where you wanted to be. You were attuned to that. You weren't numb to it. And I understand that particularly in, company, corporate environments, we've kind of been instructed over time that you don't show feeling, that you don't show emotion, have no emotion, no emotional connection to it. Just do the job, do the task. That works for employees. Okay. But for leaders, for resilient entrepreneurs, for people like you, it is very important to be attuned to what you are feeling. When the Harvard Business Review studied what has the greatest impact on the bottom line of an organization, the greatest impact on the bottom line of an organization is, catch this, the attitude of the CEO. The CEO's attitude has the greatest impact on a company's profit and loss. So emotional intelligence matters. I don't care what anybody tells you, emotional intelligence matters. And if you want to give yourself competitive advantage, recognize that you are a human being, not a human doing, and therefore be in tune with your emotions. But as it relates to the law of vibration, okay, a feeling is conscious awareness of vibration. You want to be aware of what you're feeling because your feelings, okay, your feelings attract. They're the frequency, the vibration that attracts to you more of what fits in that area or space. Make sense? Okay, so now when we look at this, I want to kind of just pause here and kind of explore this one a little bit more. In that, there's another law, the law of polarity. Okay. The law of polarity in my notes here. Okay. I didn't have that one written down. I knew I was missing one, but I also knew if I keep going because I embody this stuff, it's going to be there. And there it is. The law of polarity. The law of polarity is my favorite one too. I can't believe I didn't write that one down. The law of polarity says essentially that in order for anything to exist, the opposite must exist also. Okay. In order for anything to exist, the opposite must exist. So what we're talking about here then is recognizing that there is no such thing as anything being all good. Okay. Because in order for good to exist, there must be some bad. Another way to look at it is you don't get up without down. There is no light without darkness. There is no negative without a positive. Okay, so the law of polarity says that in order for anything to exist, the opposite must exist also. So if in your life there are areas where you are feeling resentment, if there are areas where you are angry and carrying resentments, it is important to understand that you hold that resentment because you have an unbalanced perspective. And an unbalanced perspective is what leads to the feelings of resentment. You're only seeing one side of it. Okay. Now, the reason why that's important, right, is because in order to raise your vibration again, to get out of the pit of resentment and get back into balance so that you can go about the business of manifesting that which you desire. In order for you to do that, you got to be able to raise your vibration sometime. So if you find yourself in resentment, you look in your life currently, and there's something that you're resenting or resentment that you're holding on to, understand that you have an unbalanced perspective. You're only seeing the negative of it. I assure you, if you examine it closely, there are some positives that come from it. Okay, there in social science around, and some of the studies around resilience, what we talk about there is post-traumatic growth. We've likely heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, okay? But what also exists is post-traumatic growth. That'll be another Zoom. I don't got time to develop that one, okay? But post-traumatic growth exists, and you'll hear people, you've likely experienced it yourself. You hear a person say, man, the best thing that ever happened to me was losing my job. Didn't feel like it at the time, but it was the best thing I ever did. I was scared out of my mind, but it worked out. Why? Because my back was against the wall and I had to make it work. I had to do it for my family. I had to do it for my kids. I had to do it for my own sanity. And I'm glad I did it. Or the best thing that ever happened to me was that relationship ended. It didn't feel like it at the time. I'm in the bed, I'm eating ice cream out of the tub, watching Lifetime movies, tears running into the ice cream. It was the worst feeling. But now that I look back on it, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Okay, that's post-traumatic growth, is where you don't just bounce back to where you were. Okay, you go further than you've ever been before. And the reality is that adversity visits everybody. Okay, I used to believe as a kid on west side of Idabel, I believed that it was only my family, my race of people that had struggles. I now have come to know the truth about that, but my young mind believed that. No one gets exonerated from the struggle. There's not a book you're going to read. There's not a podcast that you're going to listen to. There's no YouTube video out there that can promise you that you won't have challenges and obstacles in your life. So if adversity visits everybody, then the thing you want to do is ensure that you are equipped to bounce back faster than anyone else. You want to bounce back from things that cause other people to quit. That's your competitive advantage. Your ability to do that is in relation to your understanding of the laws that govern our existence. And one of those is the law of polarity. And the way that it works, then, if you find yourself in resentment, you got to bring yourself up. But it also works like when you're really infatuated. There are likely people who look at your success, Sandy, and they're like, man, if I could just get to where Sandy is, I wouldn't have a care in the world. Everything would be smooth sailing. There'd be no challenges, no difficulties, right? And Sandy knows that that's not the case, right? So sometimes what can happen is we delay our achievements because we have a false idea of what it will be like. Sometimes our success is actually delayed because we are under a falsity, a fallacy in our thinking of how it will be. Again, the law of polarity says that in order for anything to exist, the opposite must exist also. And so therefore, it cannot be that everything is all good. So think back to, the beginnings of a relationship, new relationship, when the relationship was new, right? And everything they did was just so cute. You remember that? Everything they did was so cute. Ooh, they made those noises with their body and it was just so awesome. And then after a little while, right? Those same things that they did are now annoying as hell. You get the idea? All right. So once the shine kind of wears off of it a little bit. So that's just the law working. Okay. And so if we are infatuated, meaning we're really puffed up, then the law works to bring us back into balance, because in order for it to exist, we've got to have the balance. Fair enough? All right. Enough time on the law of polarity. So from the law of polarity, then there is the law of gestation. And the law of gestation is essentially saying that there is an incubation period, right? That it takes time to have it manifest. One of the big challenges that I've come to see from people over the last 20 years is that most people don't have the discipline to do a simple thing for a long enough period of time to see the results that they desire. In other words, they quit too soon. They quit too fast. The results weren't in fast enough, and so they gave up. Well, there is a gestation period, okay? And let's not be like my son, to Ryan, he's 25 now, this is years and years ago, but he comes home with a project from school, and, they send him home with a plant, this little sprouted plant and in a cup, and we were to go out in the backyard, and I think it was an apple tree. Yeah, it was an apple tree. And we were to go in the backyard and to plant it. We planted it in the backyard. That was the project. And so the next thing we planted, that was it. And then the next day, Ryan comes home from school and he goes right to the back door, goes outside, and he literally, we've joked about it over the years. He literally goes out there and he's looking for an apple tree with apples on it. And I'm telling you, it was the very next day. It was the very next day, and he's looking for an apple tree with apples on it, right? So his, young mind didn't understand the law of gestation, and that there is a period of time that must pass in order for nature to do its thing. Well, in your business and growing your business, growing your brand, growing your life, there is a period of time that must transpire. Okay. And so it is, and that's very foundational. So, many of you are in the real estate, arena. Okay. You know that the most important part of any building is the foundation. What I also find interesting is that the taller the building, the deeper in the ground they dig. The taller the skyscraper in, say, New York, the deeper in the ground they go. So depending on what the empire that you want to build for your life, for yourself, for your family, for your extended family, for your children's children, depending on the extent, okay, of the legacy that you want to build, then the more foundational you have to be and the more disciplined you have to be in the practice of principles. So the taller the building, the deeper in the ground they dig. And so translate that to you and your life. Are you willing to discipline yourself to do what's necessary to have generational wealth, legacy building wealth? Then you got to be strong with the fundamentals. It is also important to note that, everything that you need to be, to do, and to have whatever it is that you desire, you came into the world with what's necessary to create it and build it. Why? Because it's a form of energy. Energy is. And so it can neither be created nor destroyed. And so I know it sounds like I'm saying the same things and I am, because it's principle, and everything else that you're going to read, everything else that you're going to hear comes back to these principles. And if it doesn't, if these principles don't work for it, then just throw the book away. Stop reading it. That person, that thing, that author, like they're not grounded. These are the principles that govern existence, and it also governs entrepreneurship. But you got to know how it works. Okay. So everything necessary for you to grow the business and brand that you desire, you came into the world with it. You are equipped with it already. It's like everything that is necessary for the acorn to become the oak tree. Everything necessary for the acorn to become the oak tree is already contained within the seed, which is the acorn. Everything necessary for it to be an oak tree is already in the seed. Now, understand that as human beings, we can't do anything to force the acorn to grow. We can't do anything to force growth. Nothing. Nothing. Understand that. We can't force growth. There's not anything that I could do. There's not anything that Sherry could do or Lady Lee could do. There's nothing that you can do to force growth to happen. Growth is governed by the universe. So if that's the case, then it's like, okay, well, I can't make the acorn grow. Then why even bother? That's a cop out. That's a cop out, right? But understand that the intelligence necessary for it to become an oak tree is already within the seed. So if the acorn is to become an oak tree, it must, however, be willing to give up. It must be willing to cease being a seed. If it, so let's say the acorn could talk and we could ask it the question. And so, okay, acorn, what do you want? And what's your dream? And the acorn is like, oh, I want to be a mighty, mighty oak tree. And we're like, okay, great. Then before we do that, then we got to first plant you in the ground. Oh, no. I like the light. I like the light. I like being able to, no. I like the light. Just turn me into an oak tree. You're like, I got it. You want to be an oak tree. So first we got to dig this hole. We got to put you in the ground. It's going to be a little dark down there for a bit, but you'll be okay. And the little acorn is like, no. I just want to become the oak tree. And we're like, we got it. You want to be an oak tree. We first have to dig and we have to put you in the ground. And then the acorn keeps arguing. Eventually, we may just give up on that acorn. Okay. But the reality is, it's also true for us. You want a thriving business. You want a business that's winning. Are you willing to go through what it takes to become that? Are you willing to spend some time in the dirt? Are you willing to spend some time underground? Are you willing to spend some time where it's quiet and where no one knows your name and you're building? Are you willing to do those things? I understand you want a thriving business. It's like the acorn wants to be a mighty, powerful oak tree. But are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to be in the dirt for a bit to make it happen? And then once underground, that acorn does not even sprout to become an oak tree until it is willing to give up being a seed. In other words, as human beings, we have to be willing to give up what we think we know in order to become what we know we can be. We got to be willing to be wrong. We got to be willing to give up our thoughts, our ideas about how it ought to be, how it should be, how it needs to be, whatever it is that we've made up. And the thing about human beings is we don't like to be wrong. So the question for you is, are you willing to give up what you think you know in order to have what you say you want? Because you've got to be willing, just like the acorn, you've got to be willing to cease being the seed if you're ever to grow into what you're capable of being. So that is how that's how I see it. Okay. These are just my kind of current thoughts on what it takes to actually be resilient enough to grow into the person that you're capable of being. It's about understanding that it's in you already and that nothing is missing. It can't be missing because it's energy, and energy just is, and it can neither be created nor destroyed. But our thoughts, the highest form of energy, our thoughts become things. Everything that we see in our space and environment is the manifestation of thought. It's a thought that's sped up to the place, okay, that it is now physically manifested. And it is also about understanding that we are perpetually moving to further expansion, that our thoughts become things, that nothing is either good or bad, but our thinking makes it so only after we relate it to something else. So we want to be mindful of unfavorable comparisons because that leads to low vibration feeling. And the reason why we want to know what we're feeling is because conscious awareness of feeling is vibration. And that's what lets us know the frequency that we're on. And that frequency attracts to us what fits in that energy of vibration. And when we find ourselves down, we're not feeling so good, recognize that is an unbalanced perspective. And the law of polarity says that in order for anything to exist, the opposite must exist also. So we have to change our perspective on it. And then even after doing that, it's like, okay, I'm positive. Okay, I'm feeling good. All right, I'm ready to go. Recognize that I can be doing the things, and it still requires a period of time through the law of gestation. I don't get to just short circuit that. I got to be willing to go through what's necessary. And in conclusion, right, that really is what transformation is about. If you're going to move your life from where you are to where you're capable of being, what you're talking about is becoming new. What you're talking about is transforming. What you were talking about in that introduction, Sandy, is you transformed your life. And here's the good news and bad news about transformation. Transformation requires that a price be paid. You don't get to, you don't get to skip over paying the toll that's required. The lump of coal becoming a diamond only happens because of the pressure that earth puts on it. And the the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, that only happens because the butterfly displays the wing strength enough to break free from its cocoon. Okay, so the struggle is necessary to develop the wing strength so that it can fly. Why is that important? Well, because for a butterfly's defense mechanism is its chaotic flight pattern. When you look at a butterfly, you never know where it's going. That's how it protects itself from prey. So it's got to be strong enough. It's got to have the wing strength enough, right? Strong enough to flee, its predators. Okay, so nature has it set up then that we got to develop the wing strength necessary for you to protect yourself and live a long life. So the prices that are paid in your transformation are necessary so that you can maintain that level. And if you aren't willing to pay the price, then you don't get the transformation because the price is required. Does that make sense? Sandy, that's all I got. That was about, 50 minutes. And that's what I got. And whenever that's what I got, that's just like what I got. So
I
I'll turn
don't
it
know
back
how
over to
you
you.
do that without taking a drink of water or something in the middle
I
of
need
it.
some water. I need some water.
That was amazing. One of my favorite quotes, Courtland, is that I thought of while you were talking is by Thomas Edison, and it's many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up.
Yes, there's a great book on that. It's called Acres of Diamonds. Kind of tells the story of this guy, during the gold rush in California, this guy, is digging for gold. He doesn't find anything. And so he leaves, he sells his property to go looking for gold someplace else. And then the people that bought it are in the backyard kind of surveying the property. They start digging and they hit one of the big, gold mines in the West. Right. So I say, look within. Okay.
Yeah.
Look within, because within you is everything that you need to create the life that you want.
That gives me chills. Gives me chills. Thank you so much. So much for your time. I don't know if you wanted to take any questions, if
If somebody
anybody
has one,
had any
yeah,
questions from the audience. I
Dan,
just
you're
wanted
welcome.
to, just in case, give
Any
it.
questions? Any
I know some
questions.
people submitted some via Instagram ahead of time, but
Oh, they did.
I wanted to check just in case from the audience live. So I had done a story yesterday and given people the opportunity. So wanted to take a live question just in case. If anyone wants to open their mic, they can. I'll look up the questions real quick. Hang on. Okay, so
Still digest. I know, Mallory. I be going super fast, huh? She's like, I'm still digesting.
I know
I'm,
he's like a machine gun.
I'm gonna slow down one of these days, though. I'm gonna slow down one of these days. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, so here's the deal.
Okay.
It's a Sandy fail because I can't look it up. I'm using my mobile as webcam and I can't look up. Loria, are you able to open your mic and tell me the questions that you had submitted? Because I can't open, I can't open my questions from my desktop Instagram.
This is how we know it was live.
That's how much I suck at it.
Okay,
Well,
now we don't like
because
we don't use, but see, now here's the thing though, we don't use that type of term
I know,
to
I
describe
know,
ourselves.
I
We don't
know.
do that. Why don't we do that?
I'm
Because our
still
words
growing.
reflect our thoughts. I was looking this morning, I was reading this morning, and it was like three things that you don't get back. You don't get back time, you don't get back words, and you don't get back missed opportunities. Time doesn't come back. Words don't come back. All right. So once they go out, so now all of a sudden it turns into a coaching session with me and Sandy. Those words become things. And so we're mindful of how
I
we talk
know.
to ourselves because thoughts become things.
It's so true. It is so true. Um,
Yeah, I did have a
Instagram
question.
does suck though. I'm gonna say that much.
Instagram does, but not you. Okay. All right. We'll go with that. Okay. Loria, what you got? I hear you talking in there.
I think one of my very first questions was, what would you say makes you different from others in your field as a motivational speaker? What makes
Okay.
you different?
Okay. What makes me different is I only teach what I've tested, for one. So everything that I share is a result of something that I've tested. I also think that I'm unique in that I will readily say to you that I do not have it figured out. And there are a lot of places where I am not anywhere close to where I would like to be. And then number three, what makes me, I believe, different or unique is that I'm willing to go before I'm ready. Like I will
Nice.
start before I'm ready. Whereas some people feel like, like if I believe that I have something that will help you, L'Oreal Lynn, okay, if I believe I have something that will help you because I found it somewhere, I researched it someplace and I'm working it out, and I believe and I meet you, I believe that it is okay if I go ahead and share it with you before I have arrived yet. See, a lot of people want to have arrived before
Yep.
they start sharing. And I say, no, we go before we're ready. So why should me, so that's kind of, in my view, that's egotistical. Okay. So I'm going to have you continue to pay the price of not knowing because I'm afraid of your judgment of me because I'm not there yet. I don't subscribe to that. I believe that contribution is binary, which means you either can or you can't. Either you're going to make a contribution or you're not. And I don't need the full alphabet after my name to make me now certified to be a person of contribution.
Very
Thank you for that
good.
question. Thank you.
Nice.
Anyone else?
I love it. And that's exactly why I do these WTF Wednesdays is once again, I don't have it all together and I don't have to have it all together to contribute to other people and share what I've learned or bring other people together as well. And so does anybody else have any other questions?
Kim raised her hand.
Oh,
Kim Forsyth.
yes.
Hi,
Go ahead,
yeah.
Kim.
Do you have a suggested process for discovering that those steps you need to take to get from where you are to where you want to be?
Well, yes, like a framework.
Yes.
Okay, so this may throw. Well, I can tell by the question, you're super intelligent. So this won't throw you off. It'll throw off mere mortals. It would throw them off. But you got this. Okay, where you actually start is you start in the place where you're currently dissatisfied. So you start with, so in the framework that I use starts with dissatisfaction. Okay. And then it moves to honest awareness. Okay. So I can be dissatisfied, and then I need to be honest with myself that I'm not happy with where things are. Okay. I made a huge, like, major career life change in the last, 60 days. And it started, Kim, because I was on the road 200 days a year, and I'm dragging my suitcase into the Tulsa International Airport. And as I'm walking into the airport, I can hear the wheels of my luggage rolling, and it's like there's this, like, voice. I hear myself say, I do not love my life. And at first I did the typical, like, personal development thing. Oh no, be grateful, count your blessings. Da, da, da. And it was like, no, just be honest. And I said, I do not love my life. And from that place, a lot has shifted during that time. So it starts with dissatisfaction and then honesty. Okay. Then it moves to clarity of desire. Okay. So what is then, how do you want it to be? There's a gap that exists for all of us. Okay. A gap that exists. Every problem has that in common. There's what the reality is and what we desire to have it be. That gap is what we're here to support people in closing. But there's one that exists for you as well. So clarity of desire. So what do you want it to be? And then we move into action. Okay. From the initial action, we're going to get feedback. Why? Because it's not going to work the first time. Okay, it's not going to work the first time. We got to just embrace that. So we get feedback, and then from the feedback, we take new action. Okay, and then from the new action, we have achievement. Okay, and from after the initial achievement, this is very important, Kim. For after that initial achievement, there must be celebration of the accomplishment. Where a lot of people miss it is they don't celebrate the accomplishment. Okay. And actual celebration is a very important part of the achievement cycle. So then from celebration, then we move into what? Back to dissatisfaction. Because that cycle, that loop will continue. That's the framework that I use, and that's helped me over time. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. So if you have, like, what seems, at least what appears to be a big goal, do you break that cycle down into baby steps?
You can do it. You can break it down to, I go 5, 5, 5, right? So you can look at it like baby steps, like what is the win for the day? Okay. That would lead to that. So you're going to look at the ultimate goal. Okay. I want to be here in X amount of time. Okay. And then break that down to what part of that goal can be done in the next 30 days. What part of that 30 days can be done in the next week? What part of this weekly goal can be done today? And what part of today's goal can be done in the next hour, so that you have something to celebrate and acknowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Time for one more?
I have time if you have time, Courtland.
Okay,
Rick's got
perfect.
his hand up.
Okay, that's my guy. What's going on, Rick?
Hey, you are. That's what's going on.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate you. My quick question is, if you were in an arena on stage, a stadium, if there's 10,000 people, if there's 1,000, if there's 100, whatever the amount, if you wanted to grasp the attention of everyone, what would be your opening sentence?
I would open with, we have a problem. And the problem is that you've been lied to. You've been led to believe that you ought to accept less than the truth of what you're capable of. So over the next 45 minutes, let's solve it. Something like that. I don't know. But my thank you. Damn, Rick. Okay, that was good. Look, Rick, I love you too. I love you
Love
too.
you, man.
Yeah, no, you know, I mean that. So that is why I do what I do, is because I believe that far too many people have been convinced that they're capable of a lot less that they now settle for. And I'm about the work of revealing the truth to people about what they're really capable of. Miss Sandy, I appreciate you.
Gold, I appreciate you. Thank you, buddy.
Right on, right on.
We appreciate you, Courtland. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this very special WTF Wednesday's training feature. That's all for this time, and we'll see everybody next week. Thanks a lot and take care.
Thanks a lot.